Hey, today I have Fiore Aliperti. He's the CEO of Metallis Resources. And I also have Nickolas Dudek, who's the technical advisor to Metallis. How are the both of you doing today?
I'm good.
Awesome. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm doing great in
Yeah.
Vancouver for Roundup, and really beautiful and sunny here compared to Okanagan. It's a little cloudy and cold.
That's a reversal, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
It's great. So Metallis put out some news today stating that you guys had made a breakthrough geological model at the Cliff Mile system, and you also shared some drill results, including hole 21-45, which included 1.05 grams per ton gold equivalent over 43 meters. And that's over a water intercept of 0.43 gold equivalent over 220.7 meters, all from surface. So today I hope to help, that you can help to explain some of these results to our listeners with some questions that I've got for you, and also to share some of the 2022 exploration plans. So I'll get right started, right to it. So could you explain what the importance and significance of the new geological model that was mentioned in today's news release, and how does it impact the project going forward?
It's basically the important thing of this new model is that it'll provide a better framework for us from Metallis going forward for planning drill holes and for targeting. Having a better sense of how the porphyry bodies are arranged from south to north across the Cliff and Miles area has been kind of a challenging thing the last few years, trying to understand their distributions. So this new model there's sort of a two major developments in this model that will allow us to go forward. One is we're starting to recognize that the entire Cliff Miles area, maybe I could show my screen for this one, which will help a little bit. Oh, no, the entire Cliff Miles trend can be broken up into what we're calling sort of half graben blocks. And in the news release, it was broken up into block 1, block 2, block 3 for Cliff, and then Miles block. And by dividing these things up on these fault planes, sort of answers a lot of questions of why we would be stepping in the past, stepping north or south with drill holes and not hitting exactly where we expected, is because there's been some displacement across it. The other big thing with the model, which it is just a model, is that we're starting to see now that we sort of have this combination of subvertical dikes and shallowly dipping subhorizontal dikes, which might be sills by nature. And we can kind of see that the proportion of these subhorizontal structures, these subhorizontal porphyry bodies, sort of increases to the east as we move away from the central, what we're calling the central trunk of the porphyry system that sort of sits adjacent to the Adam fault. And sort of recognizing this joint vertical and joint subhorizontal pattern from block to block, and really being able to almost copy paste block to block, kind of helping us understand the distribution of our grades a bit better and timing. And it'll help us going forward with targeting, because it looks as though the trunk is, we've been calling it the trunk, the large subvertical dike or series of porphyry phased dikes are the best mineralized as so far we've seen. But the subhorizontal sills are not to be disregarded either, and they seem to have pretty good continuity because we haven't stretched them out to the east. We haven't found where they end, and the intersection of the two might be significant.
Okay, so that a lot of that is it's great. So it sounds like you've split it into the 4 blocks now. In the news release, you've also mentioned that it's a 600-meter deep half graben structure, which features a silicified gold-rich subvertical zone, feeder zone along the Adam fault. So in layman's terms, could you help what that really means for the rest of us as investors? Or
so this silicified zone, which is carrying our later gold enrichment, it's following a similar sort of or it has a similar orientation to the larger porphyry, the earlier porphyry dikes that I was describing. And in that it's exploiting the structure set up by those porphyry dikes and exploiting the same structures that the porphyry dikes themselves exploited. And what we've been able to do is find continuity between service with samples at surface and or the shallow holes drilled, shallow historical holes drilled there. And we were able to chase that out to depth as far down as the half graben block goes, with, which when we described the half graben fault curves as a curved planar component, but we've been able to chase it right down to the fault and see that, be able to postulate at this point that the faults themselves, the atom fault, as well as sort of the block faulting, might have a play or control over where our current gold enriched specification.
Okay, so you also shared the in the news release there was a substantial gold system that was described as sitting near surface at the Cliff Miles porphyry system, and that was, I think, highlighted in hole 45. Is that all part of this this new model that you've the team's come up with?
Yeah, we believe so. It so far is probably one of the better proof that our theory has legs to stand on, at least on the sort of gold enrichment side of it. It's a major pro for our understanding. And when we say model, and we're not quite at the stage now where we have a perfectly tuned 3D model ready to go. It is truly a template that as we go block to block, we can better understand where we sit. Sort of like the structural equivalent of, say, an alteration model. You can look at your mineralogy and say, okay, well, I think I'm X distance away from Y porphyry. Well, now with our structural regional or structural Hallson model, say, okay, we're in the sills, or we're approaching the central dikes, or leaving the central dikes, approaching the sills. Case.
Okay, how is you mentioned some of the 3D modeling, and then how does some of the 2021 geophysical work that you did, including the induced polarization surveys completed, how does that all fit in, and how does the drilling that you've completed this year, how does all that data come together?
With some challenge. It's still, everything's a project, and we're still building up and coming up with new ideas. Already, almost from day one, the inverted IP appeared to be good at breaking apart these blocks. You could see sort of those east-west-ish trending block faults. You could see where that occurred, north to south, and it might have highlighted actually a few smaller sub-faults that, again, although it makes the story perhaps a little bit more complicated, makes it easier to understand how continuity works from north to south. And it also highlights the atom fault itself very, very well, which is already a fairly predictable structure. It sort of just strengthens its use of the datum. And we're still working on connecting, hard geophysical numbers to our grades, but there appears to be some correlation.
Okay, and I mean, seems like with this new geological model, then you'll have a new series of top drill targets to get off on the 2022 season. So where do you think are the top priority targets across the various blocks and also at Miles, in your opinion?
Top priority. I mean, these plans will probably change. Almost certainly will change between now and then. But I'm personally fairly interested in testing the model a little further. I think it'll help us put drill holes between existing drill holes, understand how our grade varies from north to south. I think that'd be interesting to see. From our results this year, I mean, some of these sub-horizontal porphyry bodies, they vary quite dramatically in thickness. And it'd be interesting to see and try to carry that out further to the east. How open we are in that direction.
Okay. So I guess you've worked you're coming from with the background with GT Gold and now in Metallis. So like how does the Cliff Porphyry system for you compare to what GT Gold had?
It's say it's an interesting. It's a very different challenge than with GT Gold. GT Gold had more of almost a more classic porphyry structure and distribution. Its alteration assemblages and patterns were easier to understand, and sort of large-scale structural models weren't as important there. I mean, I'm sure Newmont will probably change the story as they're doing work on it now, but whereas the Holocene is definitely very important in my structural control, with just understanding. I mean, this model I've been sort of droning on, the subhorizontal porphyry and subvertical porphyry, understanding where those sit, that is a challenge, which is interesting. It makes things unique. It'd be fun going forward. The other thing, I mean, there are a couple similarities though. GT Gold Saddle North had the Folzer fault at the base of Mount Folzer, and it cuts the system pretty similar to this one. The Holocene, we have the Adam fault that cuts across, and in both cases they were excellent datums for drilling. We never had to run a hole too far and question whether to end the hole early, because we would just cross over the fault, which sort of, it helps make decisions quickly and it helps save money. There's not much worse than ending a hole too early or carrying a hole on.
Okay. All right, Nick. So if you could help step through some of the diagrams that were provided in the news release to help explain to the listeners a little bit more about what you've just explained to us.
Oh. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So here we have the plan map that came with the news release. And I think this is a good place to start because most people understand plan maps. And here we have the 4 blocks we provided the cliff and miles into, and these boundaries, this here, this here, this down here, these are faulted boundaries as far as we understand. And this is sort of this sort of explains the continuity questions we had leading into the season, and in previous, how can we put drill holes that step across, in this arbitrary example, from south to north, and then without recognizing that they have shifted relative to one another, we cross over some structure that we weren't aware of and encounter different geology. Whereas at surface, you can see, and it's sort of highlighted by this mineralized zone, this stuff is visible from surface. Like it has a rich Gaussian expression from all the phyllic alteration. It is bizarre that you don't see those breaks as strong, and it confuses drilling. I think this is also a good spot to point out that our cross-section lines, A prime, B, etc., F, X, Y, Z, miles block, they are drawn perpendicular to the Adam fault, which is this structure running down on the west side, offset down some more. Whereas the block faulting, it isn't perpendicular, it intersects the sections obliquely, which I think I was just saying in the office, if we had like a physical block model just to show people, I think it's pretty straightforward to understand. These are they're half gravens broken apart. It's just when you go into a cross-sectional view that when you go into a cross-section, AA prime, you end up having to try to portray that a fault hitting at an oblique angle. And we have the same, in this case, it's another good example too, because we have the odd late mineral or post-mineral dike. And here it is in the section, in front of hole MDO 902, one of the historical holes, at least in the section. It doesn't actually cross it. It careens off at a weird oblique angle, intersects these hole 41, 42, unusual. But drawing the cross section of the angle is also good because in addition to being, well, sort of sub-perpendicular to the atom fault, it's also sub-perpendicular to our understanding of gold enriched zones, as well as the porphyry, subvertical porphyry dikes, which sort of see here. This would be one of our subvertical dike zones, which are later become a feeder zone for our late stage gold mineralization. And this is sort of an amalgamation of multiple porphyry phases that we have so far recognized. And in this section, it's some of these, what we're calling sills, shooting off towards the east. And we haven't drilled over here yet.
Okay, so, I think that is the feeder zone something that's I don't believe has been mentioned previously. Is that something that's just coming more into the model this year?
Yes.
Yeah, it's sort of a visualization tool to help understand when we're hopping section to section. A lot of help us understand, never mind readers, because it is a complicated 3D shape, which we are still boiling down into common terminology to work with for everyone.
Yeah. Could you show us, it's postulated now that the surface has some higher grade mineralization near surface. Could you share one of those cross sections with us and like where you might try to plan to drill for the coming year? I think in the news release it was mentioned that you would go both after shorter holes and also long, deeper holes.
Sure. Well, the section I have open is already.
Or 45. Where's 45?
Yeah. Here's 45.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a decent example here, and you can sort of see it as well with MDO902, that in both the case of this gold enrichment event, as well as the porphyry emplacements before, because they're both following, from what we could tell, they have a similar structural pattern. As you can see here, some of the better grades, like MDO902, had historically had decent grades up the surface, and be interesting to follow out the sill-like limb that goes off to the east here, or if we hop to hole 45, which is more of the gold enriched story, same deal here. We don't know how far in this direction this goes. We don't know. It's still open. The sort of strata-bound mineralization is still open in this direction. We've cut it off here. Too crazy with our interpolation. This would be an area that's
That's the trench at the top, correct?
Yeah, right here. Almost 20 meters at 1.3 gram per ton gold and 6,000 copper.
Okay, and that trench was done historically or in past couple of years?
We did it.
Okay.
When did we do it, Nickolas? It was 2018 to 19?
I think so. I'm not off the top of my head. It was a few years back. Yeah.
Okay. So I also understand that the company had conducted some Z10 surveys. Could you let us know how that's going and when that we might see some of that data?
Hopefully in the near future. We just got this data back fairly recently, as well as timed with return of most of our assays. So we're still going through it. I'm sure the previous news releases have shown it covers a massive area. So there's going to be a lot of work to break it apart and try to understand everything it's showing.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see something.
Yeah. All right. So something that we will be looking forward to. All right. Thank you, Nick, for kind of giving us the rundown there. And so kind of the question for Fiore now. So given what we've learned in 2021, what are your thoughts for the 2022 exploration season?
Well, my thoughts are a couple fold here. Number one, with the assays in hand and the drill sections, and something that Nickolas did not touch on. He is putting together also a 3D model of the Hallwison and from the drills that we've had over the years. So he's putting that together, and with that, and that we would receive the 3D model of the ZTEM, and we need to incorporate that with his other 3D and with everything inside. I'm looking forward to having all that information before we get on our property, before we even start to plan anything. I think it's going to help us a lot, you know, with all the information, IP, ZTEM, geological mapping, drilling, and that will dictate more of where we're going for 2022. So I'm excited. There's the addition of Nickolas with us, and more to come. We'll touch on that later, not on this interview anyway. Yeah, we're going to have a very good, experienced team taking us to the next level, and this is what we're looking for, and this is what the Metallis and the Kirkham property need, is that. So basically, I'm quite excited about all that. And then dictating what the drill program looks like after Nickolas and the team have finished with all the information from 3D modeling, 3D ZTEM to all that, we'll have a better idea. But we want to be aggressive on both sides, on the copper gold porphyry and the gold. I don't know what gold
Enrichment.
Yeah. We don't know whether to call it epithermal. We're not 100% sure. We're working on that right now. So we're quite excited about all this, and I'm also excited with our neighbors and what they're doing and what they're finding, and to understand the area that we have our property is very important. The structure, as Nickolas alluded to earlier in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I've answered your question, Andrew.
Yeah, that was great. So basically, we're waiting for some more data that Nickolas and the geological teams are working on. You'll be back on the mountain sometime in the summer, and we'll definitely touch base again.
We're looking,
in the new,
Andrew. Sorry, yeah, we're looking this year to start in June. We're looking for an earlier start. It'll be easier on us, and there's reasons why. We'll get into that. But again, it's Nickolas, Jules, the whole team getting together and finalizing everything before we get out there, and that's the important thing.
Okay. I guess one last question is, do you
Yes.
have the drill contractors lined up and kind of the camp situation, the kind of all the logistical things that you need?
Helicopter, drill pad, and camp are already set.
Excellent. That's really good to hear. So Fiore and Nickolas, thank you for joining me today, and hope to get another update from you in the near future.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Nick.
It's a pleasure.